Greetings! It is I, Tentus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. Or should I say welcome back. It has quite a while since I recorded a video like this, and yes, this is a different setup than I normally use, just temporary until I can put back together my original video setup for recording for this. So, expect a couple of weeks of probably this version of me in the front before I go back to the full-bodied me behind my wonderful, wonderful bookcase of magic cards, anime paraphernalia, and some video game systems. But regardless, until that occurs, we're going to continue with what we're talking about, and we were discussing Pathfinder. Yes, we were talking about the races of Pathfinder. In particular, we were going over some of the more unusual races that you could play that are not ones in the core book. And today is no exception. We're going to be talking about Kitsune. Now, I am making an important note here before I dive into depths of talking about the Kitsune here, that I will be making at the start of all of my Pathfinder videos for at least a while to come, that I'm going to be talking about this for 1st edition Pathfinder. I will be making some notes about 2nd edition Pathfinder, and I will be putting a link in the description below to the conversion guide between those. Go to your GM before you convert anything over, especially if you'd want to play something like a race. They'll help you out to figure out what the appropriate conversions are over, but I'm going to just give some generalizations where it helps you with the conversion guide, not hinders you. So that's just a quick note here. Most of the stuff here that I'm going to be talking about will be standard to 1st edition Pathfinder. The 2nd edition stuff, again, talk to your GM. So let's talk about the Kitsune then. So they are a fox folk, as they are called. They are a type of shape-shifting humanoid race that you can play. They are known for an incredible love of art and things like music, stories, and such, and for trickery. But for friendly trickery, not for like devious trickery that goes against people. They have 2 forms that they assume. They can assume the form of an attractive human of some type, with oftentimes very slender, very lithe, and then they can also take the form of an anthropomorphic fox, a fox person. So that's one important thing to note here. I did say they were masters of trickery, but they are friendly deception, and that's why they actually prize loyalty. They might play little tiny tricks on you here and there, but they are a very loyal race, and if you should make one a true friend of yours, they will be a companion as long as you do not go against that loyalty that they've instilled in you. So, as I said, they do love art, too. Riddles and storytelling are very big aspects of them. They like to use this to pass on wisdom. They oftentimes talk about stories with the living or even spirits of the world around them. For classes, just an important note here that Kitsune do make important, good bards and rogues. Some do go after sorcery, and there are a few that are born with white fur and very pale eyes, very unique for their race, that become oracles. Here's an important note for 2nd edition. If you're looking to play an oracle or something equivalent to that, they don't have an oracle class. But you can play a sorcerer bloodline that has any kind of divine spell list. So as I said, the Kitsune has 2 different forms. A single human form, which they appear perfectly human. It's important to see that they only have this one version of it. And so it's very hard to determine if this human is a Kitsune or not. They look human. Now they also have a fox form. The fox form will have fur that reminds you of oftentimes the red fox. So a kind of auburn, kind of brownish red, white tail tips. That gives you an idea of how they are supposed to look. But regardless, in either of these forms, they are the same forms. They only shapeshift between 2 different forms. They do have that kind of bodies that look like they're very lithe, dexterous, a kind of beauty to them. And their eyes are always the same, either golden, amber, brilliant blue sometimes. The thing about it that's important to note is sometimes you do get Kitsune in their, animalistic form that do have more exotic colorations. They are rarer, but it is possible. Now, with Kitsune society, the idea of loyalty is intrinsically ingrained within it. That means that they really revel in their friends and being very loyal to them. And amongst their friends, they will have that good-natured mischief and trickery. And in the same retrospect, that pursuit of art oftentimes leads to levels of competition between them, that the artistic forms that they take again, more often than not, which tend towards more telling of stories than anything, though art in general is very important to them. they can have big, very tall tales or falsehoods that they attempt to one-up each other in competitions. Now, if you're looking to play a Kitsune and you're looking what alignment to play, they tend to be neutral. Now, this doesn't mean they have to be true neutral, but they will often have a neutral component to whatever alignment they do take. And Kitsune adventures are common. Kitsune like adding to their own names and their own basically myths and legends that make themselves into these stories, being either explorers or heroes, and comparison to older explorer heroes that come from older tales around them, and therefore become tales of the next generation or next few generations, basically becoming immortal within the tales of Kitsune society themselves. So Kitsune adventurers are a common thing, and many of them travel far and wide. Now, Kitsune do reach adulthood about 15, around the same time as humans, and have the same kind of years that they would be trained in it. A average Kitsune male is between 5-6 feet tall. Female is just a few inches shorter than that. Now let's talk about racial traits. Again, as I want to note here earlier, these are for Pathfinder, the original, not the second edition. You would have to go to your GM to adapt these. So ability scores. They get dexterity, charisma, they lose some strength. They are, an important thing to note here, a Shapechanger subtype, with the Kitsune subtype to their humanoid type. That Shapechanger subtype is important because it depends on how certain spells, abilities affect them, and certain feats that aren't specifically just Kitsune feat apply to Shapechangers would apply to them. They have the same base speed as a human, they speak Common and Sylvan, and of course have more options for languages as you get more intelligence. So, Kitsune are agile. They receive +2 to acrobatics. They have their change shape ability, which is a standard action which allows them to switch between their Kitsune animalistic form and their humanoid form. In their human form, they don't have their bite attack, which I'll talk about in a minute, plus they get a +10 bonus to disguise themselves as a human if they're in their human form. This works as altered self, but their ability scores change the same. They don't change like they would as normal altered self. Which brings me to their natural weapon. They have a bite when they're in their natural animal form, their Kitsune form. It does deal 4 points of damage. And the last normal trait they have is, of course, low light vision. Now, there is one other racial trait they have. Any enchantment spells they cast are +1 DC, and if they have a charisma of 11 or higher, they can use dancing lights 3 times per day. Now, Kitsune do have another alternate racial traits that they do have access to. When it comes to alternate racial traits, this comes down to more ancestry when you're looking to 2nd edition. So it will definitely be up to your GM and working with them to determine if you want to use some of these alternate racial traits for the Kitsune you're building, how they would work into the ancestry you're building, and to possibly even some racial feats that you might take later on. Some of these might be turned into racial feats. I will talk about the established racial traits after this. So for their alternate racial traits, now that we kind of got that basics out of the way, they got some interesting ones. One replaces their ability to use some magic for bonuses to bluff and disguise. It makes them a little bit more duplicitous, as it's called. You're basically attempting to trick more of your human neighbors that you are more human, hence the bluffing and disguising. Some of them are a little faster at shapeshifting. Fast Shifter is an ability that can replace your magic again, where you can shape change as a move action instead of a standard. The thing about this one, I will kind of talk about that there's some more options because there's a feat that also speeds this up that it's hard to say if you want to take one or the other because time periods. Gregarious is a special ability that they do have, which is basically diplomacy based. It replaces their agile ability, and when you use diplomacy to win someone over, any further charisma-based skills you'd use on that person for 24 hours are at -2 to them to resist. Effectively, if I use diplomacy on someone, it's easier to use bluff or more diplomacy on them later on. An interesting one is one that replaces their ability scores. Keen Kitsune is what it's called. It effectively changes their charisma bonus to an intelligence bonus. That's it. The dex bonus stays the same. Their strength penalty stays the same. It's seeing themselves as being less amicable with people and more clever, going on that clever cunning side that often relates to their trickery. Multilingual is an ability that they could take that kind of pushes them beyond the normal languages they can speak. It changes the languages that they have normal access to, and they're agile, and it opens up that they can effectively take any language when they take languages for their bonus intelligence. it's something that if you don't want to take like a linguistic skill, this might be an idea of a way to get a lot of languages early on that are very open. Skilled is something that they can take, which replaces both their agile and Kitsune magic. This is very similar to the human skill ability. Effectively, they gain additional skill rank at first level and 1 additional rank whenever they gain a level. This is an interesting one because it would be very hard to translate into 2nd edition, as the skills have changed very rapidly, but probably your GM could figure out some way of using it. The last way is a superior shapeshifter which they can take, which replaces their Kitsune magic again. Most of these replace Kitsune magic, so keep an eye out for what you're replacing if you want to have multiples of these abilities. This grants them a bonus feat at first level, the Fox Shape bonus feat, which I'll be talking about in a second, ignoring the prerequisites. Which gets us into, I did want to talk about their racial feats before I talk about their racial classes. Fox Shape. That's the first one we're going to talk about. It allows a Kitsune to shape change into a fox also. This works as B-shape too, and much like the normal shape changing into a human where they get plus 10 disguise to pretend they're a human, this grants you plus 10 racial bonus to pretend you're a fox. It changes the bites damage that you normally have to D3. You're a much smaller creature. You're a fox instead of like a fox man. The thing about this one, which is important to note with the last one, it has a prerequisite of a charisma prerequisite, a base attack bonus, and being a Kitsune. The base attack bonus says you have to be at very least level 3 before you take this. That's why the shape-changing alternate racial ability is very good, because you can ignore that major one of these prerequisites. Now this does leads us into the other one of the Kitsune feats that I kind of wanted to hint on, and I did hint on when I was talking about the alternate racial traits, Swift Kitsune Shapechanger. This one has a base attack bonus of 6, otherwise, and a dex requirement in order to take. Like the one before, a Kitsune can take this anytime they can take a feat. The thing about this one is, yeah, you have to have at least base attack bonus of 6. It allows you to switch between your 2 forms as a swift action, rather than a standard action. And it does specifically mention if you do have Fox Shape, you can change the swift action here. So that's actually really important that it does pertain to the previous feat that we were talking about here. So it's very interesting that you can either choose to convert it to a move action or convert it to a swift action. But the swift action, you can't really take it early on, so maybe you want to take the move action right away. It's action economy that you have to worry about that these two kind of hit into. And action economy can be very important and difficult to manage. Now, realistic lightness. This is one I do want to talk about, but I want to give with a big caveat, because the wording of the feat is bad. It kind of states that you can take the form of an individual, granting you plus 10 disguise bonus to fool others with your impersonation. It doesn't really say, it does mention that you have to be an individual you encountered, but it doesn't say specifically a human you've encountered. The purpose of this feat sounds like it means that if I encounter a human as a Kitsune, I can change my human form to look like that individual, rather than the normal human form I'm born with, that I can change into at will. This is like I developed a special ability that now I can mimic other humans and have plus 10 to disguise to mimic them, rather than just plus 10 disguise to mimic a human. It says that sort of in the feat, but the language is very bad again. Some feats like this have very bad language, and you have to be careful about this. And if you are going to use it, talk to your GM before using it, just to make sure they understand where you're going with it. Magic Tail is an interesting one because it grants you spell-like abilities. There's 8 of them. There's a whole list of them. The thing is, you have to take the feat multiple times, and each time you get a new ability from the list. The abilities are numbered 1 to 8, 1 being Disguise Self, 8 being Dominate Person. I would have to take the feat 8 times to get Dominate Person. I'd start with the Disguise Self with number 1 every time, and then go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can use these twice per day, and that's pretty much it. And the DCs are charisma-based, and your caster level is based on your hit dice. Vulpine Pouts is an interesting one that requires you to have a very high base attack bonus, 10, and the Swift Kitsune Shapechanger. This is more for a Kitsune fighter or similar class that would have a lot of fighting ability, because it says when you change into your Kitsune form and use the charge action in the same round, because again, the Kitsune, you need the Swift Kitsune Shapechanger, so you can do a swift action, you make a full attack against your opponents. So this is you can shape change into your Kitsune form and kind of pounce on someone, getting a full attack even on a charge. That's really good. It's good. It gives you the pounce ability that some felines and other monsters get, allowing you to make a full attack on a charge. Now let's talk about the two Kitsune racial class archetypes you can take. There's one for Rogue and one for Sorcerer. The Rogue one is Kitsune Trickster. It kind of makes sense what it sounds like. It's combining little modern arcane powers and with their likes to trick and their ability to lie. At first level, they don't have trap finding. Instead, they get their intelligence bonus to bluff, diplomacy, disguise, and sense motive. This is an interesting one because you're adding your intelligence modifier to these as a bonus, beyond what you'd already get for your wisdom, meaning that these 4 skills are going to be very good. Then, instead of trap sense, you get a charm person once per day that it's 6th level and every 3 levels after. So basically 3rd level when you get it, then at 6th level you can use it twice. Every 3 levels after you can use it an extra time. It's just charm person as the thing. And then like most rogue archetypes, they give suggestions for rogue talents and advanced talents, but they keep the abilities relatively simple. Now the sorcerer one is the 9-tailed heir. This kind of mentions the facts that there are Kitsune that get sorcery, but the idea of the 9-tailed fox is something rare even among Kitsune. There are stories of it. There are ones that actually exist. It's just a real rarity. It's 1 in thousands gets the ability to become a 9-tailed heir. And then they become sorcerers, because the entire thing about this bloodline is you do not get bloodline spell class feature. Instead, you get the magical tail feat. It's at 3rd level, and every 4 levels after, you gain the magical tail as a bonus feat. Now, this would, of course, mean you're not going to get all of them. That only gives you a magical tail 5 times, and there are 8 of them. But they do mention the fact that this is a way of getting more feats for that, because if you should get all of your tails, you basically have taken it 8 times, and so you have your 9 tails. Each additional time you do take the feat, whether through just taking it for your normal feats, or through your magical tail bloodline ability, which is not really a bloodline ability, you gain 1 additional daily use of the lowest level magical tail ability that you don't already have affected by this. So it starts with your disguised self will get an additional use, then number 2 will get an additional use, then 3, then 4, then 5. So if you should somehow be able to take it 16 times, you would have 3 uses of your dominate person. And that's it for today. So we talked about the Kitsune. The Kitsune are a very interesting race to play. They've got some unique traits to them, being a little bit of tricksters, but very fearsomely loyal still. That kind of connection of loyalty that overrides their need to just continually trick people, making it that it's friendly tricks rather than anything dangerous, deadly, violent, anything like that. They never trick, unless they of course are wicked in nature anyway, with malintentions. It's always a friendly jest. And that makes them an interesting juxtaposition on an attitude for a character, and trying to find and build some kind of character build that reflects this nature, but still embraces the individuality of the adventurer that you want to be. They're a race that is quite fun to play. And the idea of having multiple forms is always a fun one. It allows access to a number of feats and abilities that normally only druids would have access to, or possibly some other kind of monstrous race. But no, Kitsune can have it too. They are Shapechangers. Of course, remember to like, subscribe, and comment on this video. It helps support the channel. All the ways to support the channel: you can of course join the Discord channel, find out what's going on, when I'm streaming, when content is coming up online, all those different things. You can also, of course, support me through Patreon. It's a great way of showing support for me to continue what I'm doing, to get more of this content out more regularly, and perhaps maybe get an editor at some point in time that can get a lot more of these things out more efficiently than I can do. But have yourself a great rest of the day, and until the next time, I bid you farewell.